Only got 5 to 6 strings on it. Somebody had left me this guitar. I'm Aldo Tafari, born in New Jersey in the United States. Grew up, I'm a first generation American. My family, my pops comes from Italy, you know, so he was born in Italy, I was born in the States. My son's born in South Africa. We just kind of hop around. But yeah, my dad was an artist in college. You know, I guess all his life, but I don't know how it was for him being a first generation American, but he painted, you know, he did oils, he did watercolors, you know, things like that. And but I think he pretty much stopped like after college when I came around. So music I didn't really get from him because his taste kind of went with, you know, Frank Sinatra and, you know, that Italian kind of music that, you know, you would expect to listen to. But his little brother, my uncle, he became a Hare Krishna in like the 70s, like 1974. So he gave my dad all of his record albums even before he went away. So in the record collection was the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, Jimi Hendrix, Pink Floyd, David Bowie, Cheech and Chong albums, things that I didn't get then as a kid growing up in the 70s, but you know, listening to these albums all throughout my adolescence. And you know, I'd be listening to Cheech and Chong albums, and I didn't get any of the jokes. I'm like, why is this funny? I didn't understand it. The album cover was funny, but the comedy was very, you know, dry. But the older I got, the more hilarious it became. But anyway, music was just a response to angst growing up in New Jersey. It was always a good respite. I didn't think I was musically inclined until I started listening to punk rock. And then I was like, oh, I could put together 3 of these chords, you know, and yeah. So me and my cousin started a little punk rock band, which I think the pinnacle of our career was like opening up for the Rocky Horror Picture Show one time, man, in the 80s. It was nice. When I was a child, you know, it sounds odd, but one of the things I really wanted to be was a hobo. I wanted to ride trains, carry a bindle stack, have, you know, but wear a suit. You know what I mean? Like, because when I was a kid, I would watch old movies. Like for some reason, growing up in the 70s and the early 80s was kind of like growing up in the 50s, or, you know, like everything you watched was old. So I watched a lot of Three Stooges, the Marx Brothers, like all these kind of old movies that would kind of romanticize being a tramp or, you know, a comedy, you know, like a broke guy. But all these guys all had suits on. I never understood that they were poor, but the guy had on a 3-piece suit, a waistcoat, a jacket, and slacks. His shoe would have a hole in it and whatever, but, you know, and I'd always romanticized about that. And, yeah, so I guess I just appreciated that, and which I guess led me to a life of like appreciating freedom, like real freedom, you know, freedom to make mistakes, freedom to, you know, go forwards or backwards, but you're doing it, you know what I mean? You're in control. And that was a big thing, you know, especially with the music, because when I started playing music, I learned you ain't got to play, like I've only played for myself. I didn't play for a band. I've been in a couple bands, but that was because after, you know, I came halfway decent, so to speak. But it started with the punk rock and knowing that I didn't have to be that great, and I could just play to enjoy myself, and then if other people enjoy it, and you can find your audience there, you know. What really gave me a taste of traveling was the Grateful Dead. I don't know if you're familiar with the Grateful Dead, but they're like a rock band from the 60s, and they travel around the United States, and people follow them. So if you really want to have an adventure in the United States, at least back in when I, you know, was in school in the 80s, you go follow the Grateful Dead. Like, they literally changed me from punk rock to hippie music. I appreciated all the hippie drugs, but I had a lot of angst in me. And then one time I went to a Grateful Dead concert, or it might have been Pink Floyd, but I hung out with Deadheads, and, you know, we ate some acid. Next thing you know, you're like, wow. And I traded my skull jacket for a tie-dye t-shirt, like literally in the parking lot of a Grateful Dead show. And then, you know, you go from one show and you go see like 5 more shows that are on the East Coast tour, and you sleep in cars and campgrounds, and I just had an amazing adventure. So the Grateful Dead taught me how to have an amazing adventure on the road, you know? And, you know, I followed them around for like 10 years. And then not going to every show, but just doing my little comfortable bit. And, you know, the local college, Virginia Commonwealth University, and the Medical College of Virginia. They didn't want me to have hair past my collar. I couldn't, you know, have that clean shaved face. And, you know, I had a little like mustache, and it drove me crazy, man. Like, because I'd, you know, clock in and I, you know, I mean, I'd smoke a spliff and I'd have to walk into this police station to clock in and clock out. And I'd be smoking spliff the whole time because I'm a security guard on the night shift, just making sure basically all the doors are locked, you know? Hey, but they knew I was a smoker, at least everybody but the sergeant. But anyway, I left them and ended up working at a gas station, a garage. And from there, that's when my beard started growing and my hair started growing. And I was like, this is the freedom I was talking about. That's where I ended up citing out Rastafarianism. Was in Virginia in like 1992, I'd say it was, like late 91, early 92. And which is still part of me today, you know? Yeah, I'm a Rastafarian. There's been a lot of waves with it, but I know that his Imperial Match Stamper, Haile Selassie of Ethiopia, is like a Prakash, is the energy, like he's the last form of God on earth to give mankind lessons, you know, in the 20th century. The last one that was there to tell people, you know, right from wrong, like how to deal with morality in the 21st century. Well, he did the best he could, yeah. You can see what happened to him through history. But Jamaica, I told you, this is where I first sighted up Rastafarianism, and it was fresh. I didn't know anything. I didn't know how to dreadlock my hair. I didn't know, you know, I was reading the Bible, a little King James Bible, but I knew that the King James wasn't like the real Bible, so I didn't know what, you know, I didn't know what to do. So I said, I want to go to Jamaica, where Rastafarianism started, and find out what Bible the Rastas read. You know, I wanted a Rastafarian Bible. That was my goal. I was trying to grow dreadlocks, so I didn't know how. So I went to a hair salon, and they just plaited my hair with like all these plaits. You know, I looked like Coolio or something, like with all these braids, and always wearing a tan, you know, like those Guatemalan knitted caps. Bought a one-way plane ticket to Jamaica, and which was an adventure on its own, you know. And I'm talking about something that really, to the core, made me believe that there's something to his Imperial Match Stamper, Haile Selassie, to Rastafari, which was basically when I went down to Jamaica on a whim, just because I wanted to get a Rasta Bible, and you know, and I didn't know any Rasta tenants, you know. Basically, I watched a bunch of Bob Marley videos and you know, a couple Jamaican movies, and I did a lot of research on Haile Selassie at the college library. You know, I mean, reading through encyclopedias and things like that, because I never knew about Haile Selassie before this. You know, in America, they cram World War II down your throat, but they never mentioned that Haile Selassie was basically the beginning of World War II, like how he shattered the myth of collective security by going to the League of Nations, saying, "Hey, man, you know, Italy invaded us, and they're a league member, and I'm a league member. How come, you know, you're letting this happen?" And then it just, you know, once they knew that the League of Nations didn't have no teeth, Hitler was able to move on, you know, all the Poland and what, and everything that happened. So to me, that blew my mind. And then to find out about the Ark of the Covenant being in Ethiopia, and to find out about Queen of Sheba and King Solomon, like I've read the Bible. I grew up a Catholic, you know. But I never knew that the Queen of Sheba was the Queen of Ethiopia. It's in the King's 10 in the Bible, you know what I mean? And I was like, wow, like all these things kind of blew my mind. Synchronicity started happening. So I get to Jamaica, and I didn't have no money. By the time I got there, I literally had like 35 cents in my pocket. And when I'm going through customs, the guy's like looking at me, and he's like, "Oh, this fucking guy." And he's like, "All right, where are you staying?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm staying in Montego Bay." Yeah, I know you're in Montego Bay. Where are you staying? You know, "Oh, I'm meeting some friends. We're going, you know, we have a house." And the guy's like, "All right, how much money do you have?" "I don't have any money." "You know, you don't have no money." Boom, stamp my paper, reject. And was like, "Hey, that's it. You're going back." When you get off the plane, they give you this complimentary drink of rum punch, right? Ice didn't even melt in my glass, and I was back on the same plane I just got off of, in like the very last seat on the plane. And tourists are now filling up the plane. They're all tan, their hair's all braided, and they're sending me back, you know? And I'm like, what? Like, I'm like, this is a mistake. I gotta talk to somebody. Stewardess, I gotta get off the plane. They're like, no, you gotta stay there, sit there. And I was like, oh, I gotta get off this plane. And so I closed my eyes and I prayed, bro. I prayed like when you pray, like before your head gets chopped off or something is about to happen, you know? And I'm like, I came all the way to Jamaica. I quit my job. I broke up with my girlfriend. I sold my motorcycle. I gave away everything I owned until I just had one bag, like an army bag. And I brought everything I owned with me in that army bag. I'm talking about a hammock, blankets, what little clothes I had. And you know, I'm like, I can't go back to the States, you know? And I'm thinking like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I'm praying. And then it came to me like a bolt from the blue, like a voice. It was like, what do you expect to happen? The plane's not going to all of a sudden just break down. Like you have to get off the plane. Like you have to figure out a way to get off the plane. You know, like this is your moment. What are you going to do? What did you always do when you wanted to get out of something? Like think. And I was like, oh, I know when I was in school, when I wanted to get out of class, I'd pretend I'm sick, you know? So I held my belly, I started hyperventilating, working myself up into a state. And then I'm like, stewardess. She comes over, what is it? And I'm like, I gotta get off the plane, man. I'm like, I don't feel good. I feel like I'm gonna get sick. I'm freaking out. She's like, look, take these pills. And I'm like, Bumbleclad, I don't take pills, I'm a Rasta, which was a dumb thing for my little white ass to say at that time. And she's like, well, if you think you're going to puke, use the bag in front of you, and walked away. And I was like, this isn't going to be easy. And I closed my eyes again, and I'm still hyperventilating now, but tears are going down my eyes. And I'm like, how am I going to get off this plane? And then the voice is like, you need to use what's available to you, you know? And I know you don't want to do this, but you need to get this going. And then what I thought was, I'm an American, and I don't want to act like an ugly American. They're always making a scene. And then I was really trying to avoid that. So I was like, let me make a scene and see what I could do to get off this plane, you know? So I stand up now, and I ring the thing again, ding, ding, ding. And I stand up, and the stewardess comes over, and I'm like, look, I don't want to cause a scene on this plane, but I'm telling you, while we're talking, the doors close, boom, I'm looking out the window, the ladder's going away. And I'm like, I don't want to cause a scene, but I think this plane's going to crash. And if we take off with me on it, I'm going to freak the out, you know? And she's like, hold on, sir. Hold on. Let me go talk to the pilot. Bro, they was pushing us. She goes and talks to the pilot, and I'm standing there, and I lean up against the wall, and I hit these buttons, and they all lit up. Now I really started panicking because I didn't know what I just did, and I'm freaking out. Turns out they were just call buttons for the stewardess, but I didn't know that. So I'm like, stewardess, I hit these buttons. And she's like, calm down. We're going to let you off the plane, you know? And I'm like, huh? You know, I'm still breathing heavy. They back the plane up. They bring the ladder back. They open the door. There's 2 Jamaican police with machine guns and my bag, my duffel bag between them, you know? And I'm like, people are all looking at me, and I'm like, oh no, I'm sorry. I'm just, you know, I'm sorry. It's just a big misunderstanding. I get out. Hey, the police were like, why, man? Why'd you do that? And he's like, you just delayed that plane. All the people that are waiting are going to be now have to wait longer. The plane's going to have to refuel. All these wait the taxi again. You cost the company thousands of dollars, man. And you're not going to like where you spend the night. And we're just going to send you back tomorrow. You know, and I'm like, no, it's just a big misunderstanding. Hey, I get back and I formulated a plan. Talk to the oldest person that you see, because when I got in there, it was a young guy in his 20s. You know what I mean? A young customs Jamaican guy. He just saw me and was like, get this mother out of here. And I'm like, no, I got to find an old guy because, you know, they might take a sympathetic ear to my plight. So we get in there, there's 3 guys, 2 young guys and an old guy. And I look right to the old guy and I'm just like, listen, sir, this is just a big misunderstanding. I got $200 Western Union to me at the airport. And when the guy asked me if I had any money, I thought he meant how much money I had in my pocket. I didn't have any pocket money. I thought I was just going to go to Western Union, like walk through you, go to Western Union, collect my money and go back onto my, you know, my holiday. I didn't know it was going to cause all this mess and blah, 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 blah. He's like, okay, hold on, calm down. And I'm like, can I just make a phone call? I just need to make one phone call and I'll sort this out. Guy's like, okay, yeah, you can make a phone call. I called my mom in the United States. Mom, you got to send me $200 Western Union or they're going to put me in jail in Jamaica. What? What are you doing in Jamaica? Oh my God, I've never used Western Union before. Like she starts freaking out. But she did it. She put the $200 in Western Union. I was sat in customs for over 5-6 hours. Finally, we confirmed you got the money in Western Union. and I ended up spending 2 weeks in Jamaica, 3 weeks, turned out to be Haile Selassie's 100th birthday. He's born in 1892, July, 23rd. And I happened to be in Jamaica. I forget when I first got there, but while I was there, it was July 23rd, 1992, 100 years. And I ended up going to this Rasta took me to the 100th birthday celebration, which was like a 3-day long festival. Everybody was there. I mean, all the Marley's family. Like, I saw Damian Marley in 1992 up on stage it was just a little kid in army fatigues talking about, I mean, everybody was there, dude. Everybody was there. Bunny Wailer. Again, still had no money. So I was like collecting firewood for Rastas, and they were giving me spliffs and weed. And I found out there is no Rasta Bible. You can read any Bible. This one guy who who was impressed that I brought a hammock. And he's like, "You're a real soldier. Like, you bring the hammock and now you can set your hammock up in my..." Bruno, stop. Yeah. You can set your hammock up in my yard. There we go. Yeah, so I just set up my hammock and I lived in a hammock in a shack in his yard up in the hills of Montego Bay. Didn't even see the beach. I mean, until right before I left, I spent a couple of days going swimming. And the tattooing, like when I was a kid, I used to draw on everybody in the neighborhood. Tattoos were always fascinated me. Like, I remember being a little kid, being at a flea market, but it had a tattoo studio there. They had an indoor and outdoor section. The outdoor section was tables of people selling their junk, and the indoor sections were like shops selling junk. It was still all junk, but there was a tattoo shop, and I remember wandering in there, art on the walls, some big biker looking guy, no gloves, ink all over his hands, tattooing somebody, had a cigar in his mouth, and then he looks over at me and he's like, "What do you want, kid?" And I'm like, "Nothing, out." That's the way I always felt a tattoo shop should be. I should have that edge, So when I was a kid, I used to draw on all the neighborhood kids. Parents would get mad at me because I'd use permanent marker. I'd do like a Playboy bunny on a kid's arm, and he'd go to school for a week with that because you can't scrub it off. Oh, moms used to hate it. When I was living in Philadelphia at that point, things were going well. And I was selling ganja, and I got married, like I said, I had a kid. But then my wife at some point was like, if we get caught and you have with the ganja, it's going to, they'll take the kid away and all that kind of stuff. So I was like, all right, I'm going to stop selling weed, try to do something else. And I did several odd jobs, but I eventually got a job at this Fortune 500 marketing company as like a production manager. So that went well. I was working for like Salem Cigarettes, doing like marketing for cigarettes. And then the big tobacco lawsuit happened. So they had to cut back on all their marketing and stuff. So my project ended. But it gave me unemployment benefits, which I was able to use while I apprenticed at my buddy's tattoo studio. And I ended up apprenticing for a year and then tattooing for a while. I ended up tattooing at this biker tattoo shop in West Philadelphia. And that's where I met this girl I used to date who was from South Africa. And, it was always been my dream to come to South Africa. So we dated for a while, but then we ended up breaking up, and we became really good friends, but, just friends. So for years, she's always like, "You need to go to Africa. You should go to Africa," and I was like, "Yeah, maybe I will at this time, but that time." And in 2016, she's like, "No, you need to go to Africa. I have my baby daddy's down there. You go down there." This is like 10, 12 years later. Go down there and you can stay with him and, teach him how to grow weed the way we used to grow weed in California. You know what I mean? Like the people grew weed. And I did a little bit of growing when I lived out in LA. So yeah, go down there and teach them hydroponic growing, cloning, pump to waste, like, the techniques that they used out in Northern California. We want to do down here. And then bring your tattoo equipment. You can do some tattoos also. It's like, perfect. So I came out here, stayed with, this guy, Moa, in Alexandria for like the first 9 months I was here. It was crazy. Living in Alex, we're trying to grow weed, and it was working, but it wasn't working because the environment wasn't right for it. I was imagining a more rural environment, but I ended up being in Kingston. It was like being in Kingston, Jamaica. You know what I mean? It was very hood, and everything was it was a really cool time. But too much partying, not enough business. So I said, I'm going to leave. I'm going to go home, back to the States. And just before I was going to go back to the States, I remembered, oh, there's this girl who was a friend of my ex's, and we were friends on Facebook for all these years, like over 10 years. But we never, we would just like each other's pictures from time to time. So I'm like, let me tell this, Bootsy, that I'm here in Africa. Hey, and I called her. I said, hey, I'm in Africa. What? You're here? Blah, blah, blah. We hooked up. Hey, we've been together ever since. And then from there, to Africa. And which was always an ideal. I mean, as a Rasta, you're supposed to want to come to Africa. That was like, which I could tell you another story about that when you're ready for it, if you ask something that dovetails it. But it also brings back the fact that Rastafarianism was 100%, for me, like, okay, I told you my family comes from Italy, right? So they're Italian. Means my grandfather, he fought on the Italian side during World War II for Mussolini. Now, I didn't know this part until, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, one of my uncles said this around the table when my grandfather had passed. And I think we were having like some kind of Sunday meal. And he said, hey, your grandfather's brother died in Ethiopia, fighting the Ethiopians. I was like, what? He's like, in World War II, your uncle Luigi was your grandfather's brother, was one of the ones that came in the first wave from Eritrea into Ethiopia invading. And when they fought him off, he died, and they buried him in Ethiopia. And I was like, what? His bones never got brought home. They buried him in Ethiopia. And I was like, what? And then he's like, and because of that, your grandfather didn't go to Russia with all the rest of the men of the village. They all went to fight the Russians. Nobody came back. They all died. And if it wasn't for your great uncle dying in Ethiopia, your grandfather would have never had your father, and I wouldn't have been born. So it kind of played out to where if Haile Selassie's army didn't kill my grandfather's brother, I wouldn't have been born. So I literally owe Haile Selassie my life. You know what I mean? Like, even though in a weird twist of way, I have a personal, and that's not just philosophy for me. It's not even just spirituality, like how, that revealed itself to me in Jamaica, it really is a personal connection, and I was the first one in my family to step foot in Ethiopia since World War II, even just to get off the plane and chill for a little bit. But I look forward to going back and really exploring Ethiopia for sure. Yeah, it's similar and different. I did a traditional apprenticeship. So basically I worked in a tattoo shop, tattoo studio, helping all the artists in there, learning the trade. But I didn't do any tattoos for like the first year. Like I worked in here 12, 13 months before I did my first tattoo on myself. I would absorb the lessons. I was, back then we were making needles, which we don't do nowadays. You just get everything China. But nowadays it's a little different. It was like learning, it was like learning a whole trade from the bottom up. I copied every piece of flash in the studio. So we would have line drawings, in files, and you learn how to not cross-contaminate bloodborne pathogens, and you want to set up the area to where it's sterile, for the artist. And, so we did all this for a year before I started tattooing. And as far as the machine goes, they call it, when you build a tattoo machine, you take it apart, put it together, you have to tune it, just like as you would a guitar. And you do that by sound. Like, you can literally feel it and hear it when it's in proper tune. At least in the old school coil tattoo machines. I don't know what they do nowadays with these new rotary machines and battery operated, machines that look like dildos and shit. I mean, it's the future, and I'm excited about it. I haven't used those machines yet, but I'm excited about them because there's really been no innovation in the tattoo industry for 100 years. You know what I mean? Like once they came up with the coil tattoo machine, which is basically a doorbell. But now you got these battery operated rotary machines and everything. So that's pretty cool. Well, yeah, it's the one thing I was able to do, which, I can say I feel good about. Like, me, I grew up in America. I stopped short of saying, I'm an American. But, I was a first generation born American, which gave me that weird insight, where I wasn't, my name's Aldo. My neighbors were Joe and John and Steve and Pat. And so I was always a little bit separated. So I got into punk rock, I got into skateboarding, I got into everything that was kind of like that part of American culture, the anti-culture of culture. I'm an anarchist when it comes to politics. You know, I don't believe in Republicans and Democrats and that kind of shit, or, you know, whatever. Like, I could see the hypocrisy in all of that. It's too clear for me to subscribe to. I got out of the computer game in the 80s because I'd seen where it was headed, and I didn't want to be stuck in a cubicle under a fluorescent light. You know what I mean? To me, that just seemed like it would limit my freedom. I didn't want to trade my freedoms for money to buy freedom later. You know what I mean? Like, the people, they want money. Like, if the goal is to be happy in life, people think you have to have money so you can have things to be happy, you know, to make your life easier to be happy. And early on, I said to myself, I think I just want to be happy. I'll practice being happy instead of practicing having money to be happy. Like, if that makes sense. So I didn't want to revolve my world around making money, even though at the time I was president of the Future Business Leaders of America in my computer information processing class. And I ended up becoming a C student. I would do everything it take, you know, minimum of what it took to get through it in the class. And the teacher didn't know what to do with me. She just gave me straight C's, like, because I was helping everybody else with their programming. And then, you know, I'd spend my time in the woods after school, like really vibing with nature, finding my peace in the woods that I tried so hard to escape. So that's why when I came here and I opened up this tattoo shop, I wanted to give it like the American traditional style tattooing. Like, you know, I've been to a lot of tattoo shops. I've worked in several in South Africa, and they look like half a dentist office, you know, half an art gallery. You know what I mean? It didn't have the same, you know, punch that when I came, didn't have that guy chewing the cigar that attracted me when I was a kid. So I built the shop. And then as far as music goes, I wanted to play a lot of the early punk rock music. Bruno. He's gonna bite somebody. This guy. Bruno, come inside. Yeah, so I wanted to play punk rock music to attract the people, classic rock and roll, AC/DC, things like that. So what ended up happening was I would see the kids across the street with their skateboards, and they had mismatched wheels, mismatched trucks. The boards were all just really f***ed up. I took a couple pictures and I posted it on Facebook. And so I had a bunch of friends of mine, you know, that were like, hey, I want to send you my old skateboard decks. I want to send you some old trucks. I'm going to send you wheels. I'm going to send you skateboard magazines. I'm going to send you all this stuff, until they saw how much it costs to ship things. You know what I mean? And then, you know, skateboards are heavy, trucks are heavy and expensive. So they were like, I can't send all this stuff. And they sent me some money. So before you know it, I had like $250 or something like that, you know? And I was like, all right. So I didn't know what to do. So I went on Take-A-Lot and I bought some skateboards and I gave them out to the kids, the ones that I saw with the, you know, messed up skateboards. That was the first skateboard giveaway. And I only gave away 12 skateboards, something like that. There wasn't a lot, but they were nice quality ones. And then after I posted the video of me giving away those skateboards, more people started sending money. So then I got that money, and I was like, now I got to figure out where I can get, you know, more skateboards for the money. So I went to China Mall, and I ended up getting some wooden skateboards. And I think the second skateboard giveaway, we gave away 20 or 25 skateboards. People donated more money to it, you know what I mean? And then we did the third one, which we gave away 80. No, that was the last one. We gave away like 65 skateboards or something like that. And then the last one, we just gave away like 82 skateboards. And each time, you know, I don't know how to say this. It's been friends of mine from high school and, you know, skaters from high school that I knew that have been donating. I know professional skateboarders. I know people in professional rock and roll bands. You know, people making money on tour, like filling out arenas. You know what I mean? Not just clubs, like big bands. Nobody's giving nothing no more. And it's so frustrating, you know what I mean? That I almost wanted to stop. And then right when I stop, an angel, like some girl that I went to high school with, will be like, Aldo, I love what you're doing. Boom, here's $200, you know, and I'm like, it's back on. Like, it drives me crazy every time we do this. I don't have a nonprofit. You know, nobody can get any credit, you know, for giving me money to give to the kids skateboards. I'm doing it because I wanted to, you know, the kids here in Johannesburg got little means. You know, the city's f***ed up. it's a city in decline. It's not a city in, its booming stage right now. It's declining unless something is done. It's just, as long as I've been here, I've seen it's in decline. And the kids, man, they got to deal with, this dystopian, urban environment. And I figured the best way, the skateboards. I knew the future was going to be dystopian in one way or another. You know what I mean? They built you for it. The skateboard dystopia, that's how you get through it. Bring out your angst by thrashing, skate and destroy. You know what I mean? And so I try to turn the kids on to punk rock, skateboarding, and they're basically shitty skateboards, the ones that I get from China Mall. So I got a skateboard tool, and the kids come and I give them the tools, and they work on their skateboards. They get out here, they change their wheels, they change their trucks, they change their ball bearings, change their decks, and they do it themselves. These are kids that have never even had a skateboard before, but now they're working on their skateboards. They're learning how to use these tools. It's amazing to see them out here doing that, to be honest with you, man. They do it every day. And there's always kids every day coming to me asking that don't get the skateboards, that were like the last one we gave out to 50, 60, we had 50, the third one we gave out 50 skateboards, but there was 150 kids. 100 kids literally went without getting, we gave out some magazines and stickers and stuff like that. But the goal was to give everybody skateboards. And now my sister shop in America, Higher Ground Tattoos in North Carolina, is doing a raffle, which they do every year. And this is the big 10th anniversary raffle. And he said he's going to donate the proceeds for skateboards. These are the guys that I used to work with in Philadelphia. The guy who originally mentored me, he passed away in 1999, I believe it was. And then the rest of the artists in the shop kind of finished my mentorship and apprenticeship, rather. Then he went and opened up his own shop in North Carolina, calling it Dono's, because I apprenticed in a shop called Higher Ground Tattoos. Good, man? Yeah. Trying. So he wants to interview me now. Yeah, so Higher Ground Tattoo in Philly closed. They opened up Higher Ground in North Carolina, and then I came out here and I figured what better, honor my mentor than call the shop Higher Ground. When I made the YouTube channel, and like I said, I originally made it for my kids. I just wanted to give them an autobiographical story that would last as long as the internet. As long as my channel was up, they could, get it, download it, do whatever they wanted to do with it. Then I found myself in a unique position, where people started appreciating what I was doing. And I realized my perspective is a little different than maybe a lot of other people's perspective because of, my accumulated experiences. There's not too many. I'm sure there are some, and there's a lot of people with much more experience than me. I'm old now, but I'm if you were to classify my resume, who am I? What are you? You know what I mean? You can say I'm a tattoo artist, musician, Rastafarian, biker, Hare Krishna, traveler. You know what I mean? It's a very things that you would think or maybe not can reconcile themselves, but they sit quite comfortably in me. With that perspective, I like to try to calm down other people's angst. The way that the world is, the way that we're driven now with instant gratification and stuff, breathing particularly is the number one way to tune your body. I eventually, going through my life and my travels, I found my guru. I took initiation. I practiced certain kinds of meditation and yoga and things like that. And so when I realized in any situation, you find the things that get disrupted and what you need to do. Breathing tunes the body, and when you're upset or you're shocked or in some kind of emotional state, your breathing is the first thing to be affected. You're going to feel your breathing change, your heart readings change. Your heart pumps more your blood, and that's going to make you flush. And all this is going to affect your thought process, and all action begins with thinking. Everything is tied together, and action is the the most important thing you can do in the material world. It's the gross moving of energy, one thing to another. To do that action took a thought. That thought had logic to it or illogic, or it was a reaction based on, other kind of, psychology or whatever. So all these things are very important, and they're all intertwined. It all starts with breathing, and breathing is very important to get control of. And if you want to have any kind of control of, your thoughts and then your actions, it all starts with breathing. So I started delving into that on the topics on my YouTube channel, different kinds of yoga, different kinds of philosophy, and I always try to have open discussions. And my biggest problem with YouTube is I'm not getting questions. I'm not answering questions. It's me having to present something. So I have to think of how I can present something for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, in a way of what I want to try to get across. And personally in life, I don't really want to get anything across. There's nothing that I have to say. There's truths that I've discovered that I would love to share with people. Just truths, like universal truths, things that you can't deny, whether you're a Muslim or a Christian or, Jewish or a Buddhist or a tree or a dog. If you're alive, we share in these truths, the two truths of life, of material life, that everything is constantly in flux, everything constantly changes. And then the second truth is everything eventually ends. And then from that, we can dovetail our gross and subtle energies to, make those changes in our favor or against our favor, or try to keep them neutral and, prolong the inevitable ending as far as possible. I think we kind of get attached and diluted to that part, though. We need to accept ending, to have a better psychology in life, but whatever. So that's my philosophy. And my philosophy weaves itself through, the Vedas of India, through the spiritual practices of being a Rastafarian, being a Gnostic and occult practices growing up. I grew up a Catholic, but like any good Catholic, as soon as you leave that, you start, who's Anton LaVey? Who's Aleister Crowley? Who's, you know what I mean? You want to find all the other stuff. I have a broad spectrum of where I draw from the well. But in the end, simplify it. What my guru would say, just chant Hare Krishna and be happy. All the other stuff, you can, the mind is a wheel that constantly is spinning. So you want to direct it someplace productive. And being grounded in a spiritual practice will do that. And I stress being grounded in a spiritual practice, not flighty in a spiritual practice. As I like to tell people, believe in God, have a spiritual practice, but act like an atheist in life, because it takes, practical action to change things, not, oh, God, please change this. Oh, praying for wood. Like the prayer should be a form of service. And if you want to serve God, feed people. You know what I'm saying? Take care of people. Serving people doesn't mean give everybody a hug or give everybody the advantage to take advantage of you through your goodwill or whatever your intention is. Sometimes people need a hug, sometimes people need a kick in the bum. But that's service, depending on what your intention is. If I kick a person in the bum and I'm like, I want to injure them with that, that's a negative intention. But if my intention is to get them to move to a better spot, to where they're at, then, I feel it's okay. Not everybody's going to be nice to you, or I'm not going to be nice to everybody. But I want it to all be in service of something better. Not coming from my own ego. Now, I want to wear what they're wearing, so I want to take from them. That's gross energy, and that's an action, that's rooted in thought. You have to try to explain to somebody that even though, quote Aleister Crowley, do what thou wilt is the whole of the law, material law. Do what you want to do. You can do anything on this planet. I can sit there and not do, I can just, till I blob and die in my own filth. And people do that. They'll sit in their own filth and not do anything. That's the whole, you can do anything you want in here. But to be productive, you can still do what you want, but you should choose to do what's in your best interest. And what's your best interest should be what's also in next man's best interest. All of our interests combined will lift up the whole human race, as opposed to one man's greed interest taking from everybody else, you know. This is one of these things you pick up. And it's practically, it's hard to, you know, live it. You know, we can say it philosophically, but to live it means, you know, live with less comfort, more suffering, and then finding the truth and, you know, in that. Again, all actions have consequence. And a lot of people, they're all like, karma, but, you know, people don't know what karma is. Karma just means action. It's action in Sanskrit, you know, and all action has consequence. So there's rules to that, you know, we just kind of lump it in karma, but really it's action. And it's the actions of the people in the future. This is what's going to happen. We got countries now, we got people that, you know, we vote, we do this and that, but the corporations are quick to buy up everything. They're buying up all the land, all the water, drinkable water, you know, all the farmland, and then they're creating products that are genetically modified to grow with their food products and with their pesticide products, people like Monsanto's I'm talking about. And that's just what's going to happen in the future. Like it's a genie in the bottle. Right now, there's no way to stop the billionaire class from continuing to rule, because basically we live in a feudal system. It's a debt, instead of like, you know, slavery or, you know, like serfdom, you know, where we're working for, you know, the Lord's land or whatever. It's debt. It's debt. It's all about debt. We want to live comfortably. We want to push off death as best we can. So we want the best healthcare. We want a nice car. We want to be able to spend our leisure time looking at television or a computer or something like that and playing video games. But all that is going to come at the cost of, now you have to work for the Lord, which is the corporation, you know, whatever that corporation happens to be. They don't care what country you're in. They don't care what, you know, what your ideology is. You work for them. You spend your money on their products. And that's what gives them the power to control. They're the ones that are going to reap all the rewards. They're going to have the super yachts and the eating what, you know, the food that's not contaminated with, you know, addictive chemicals and salts and things like that they're going to keep people working, you know, and that's it. Basically, they're going to keep you working till you die. You're going to die at work, and that's basically it. You know what I mean? Like, unless you're in a different class, it comes down to a class system. You know, you work for the company, you're a manager in the company, you're a boss in the company, or a shareholder in the company, you're the CEO of the company, and each one of those is going to have a completely different life, like in Blade Runner or in The Fifth Element, or, you know, Cowboy Bebop. I think it's like these future kind of movies to where everything is bought and sold, and you can't move from point A to point B unless you pay your way through. It's going to be a toll road for everything, and, you know, it'll benefit some, and it'll not benefit others. You know, I mean, if I always look at it like, if the powers that be, if these corporations, people like the United States and whatever, were able to afford everybody a house, healthcare, a food stipend, you know, and education. It's 4 basic things. And then if the 5th one could be environmental protections, which that way the corporations don't run amok, you know, with their polluting, you know, because to make a profit, you have to cut corners, you know. So let's say these 5 things, you know, I don't think nobody would really have a problem with what America has to offer. But I think what they show you is like a, you know, like a prize that you want to get, and then you realize when you reach for that prize, you're standing knee high in a bunch of shit. You know what I mean? Because to get through that, you know, you got to deal with X, Y, and Z. This country had a perfect opportunity. You know, you produce gold and diamonds and platinum, and, you know, the money should be poured out into the government to have healthcare, to have you know, food and you know, whatever. Like this could be Wakanda if it was applied properly. But same with the United States. It could be Star Trek utopia if you call it state capture here, but there it's lobbying. And like I said, you have billion-dollar corporations lobbying politicians to pass laws in their favor so they can continue to make. I mean, that's how you get a Donald Trump. You know what I mean? I mean, this guy is a clown. He speaks nonsense, but because of the backing of big corporations, he's able to get into the ear of everybody that wants something. Christians are like, yeah, he's a God-fearing man. He's like, and then the poor people are like, he's gonna help us get jobs, and immigrants are taking our jobs, and and the billionaires are like, he's gonna cut our taxes. You know what I mean? And make us super billionaires. And so it's a range of bullshit that you see hand in hand. I think when they say when the corporations and the government work hand in hand, that's fascism, and especially when they use violence to suppress any dissent. And believe me, that was my grandpa. Like I was telling you earlier, he was in Muslim, in the army fighting for fascism. You know what I mean? And they flat out called it that. Like the government owned all the land in Italy and stuff like that. And it didn't work out well for them. It's not going to work out well for the ultra right Republicans. I'm going to call them that. The far right Christians that want to change whatever is neutral about American democracy into like a Christian theocracy, and it's a scary thought. But there is a rise in that going around the world. A far right ideology that's from South America to even in Europe. I heard Germany just had a far right prime minister elected or something like that. And they said that hadn't happened since World War II, making people nervous. And I don't follow the news much, but some of it does trickle down to me. But again, in life, stay neutral, chant Hare Krishna, be happy, and then act when you have to for your own peace of mind. Yeah, I don't know, but it's going to be, like I said, a future like Blade Runner. The Fifth Element. We're going to have flying cars, but the people on the ground are going to be, suffering with garbage everywhere. But the people that live in the sky, they'll be happy. Yeah. Why would they do that? Because it benefits the corporation. You know what I'm saying? Like it benefits the control of the people that's paying, for that control. That stuff's not free. And you always got to think about whose best interest is it in. You know what I mean? Who's voting for this? And if you're voting for that, why? You know what I mean? Like everything has a logic behind it. I've always, like I said, since the 80s, since the first time I seen the movie Blade Runner in the 80s, yeah. And speaking of it, it was very Asian-influenced futures. There's a whole genre of Asian-inspired, dystopian futures, like where we see that happening. And it's just logic. I mean, we follow logic. Right now, China's, giving away interest-free loans to, African nations, in the hope of them defaulting on the loans, and then they get the land, you know what I mean, and stuff like that. Bruno, throw in a piece of chicken. Oh, it's the dog. It's the dog across the street. Bruno, he's not going to stop. Just like that little dog. Hey, you. Yeah, but it's going to be like that. Facial recognition. You go into an airport, go into a mall. Bop, 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 bop. It's the future. Yeah, it's AI. You know what I mean? Like I'm a fan of AI because I've been studying it since the 80s, and it's got amazing applications. But the difference between a gun to save your life or take a life is the person holding the trigger, and it's the same with AI. It was the same with who has this technology. If we're using it to hold ourselves back, I don't see the point. That's why I left the computer game. I'd rather go sit in the woods than sit in the cubicle, And here I am sitting in the cubicle. They don't understand that tattoos itself go back to the beginning of civilization. They say prostitution is the oldest profession. I bet you she had a tattoo. You know what I mean? It goes back to like where the shaman of the tribe would bestow a tattoo on a hunter or somebody sick or whatever. It had a meaning to it, and with the age of exploration and the way things grew. People started getting tattoos from less spiritual reasons and more decorative purposes. And then you go back 100 years to sailors and bikers, and in theory the same thing, but it's it changes with the times. I'm getting an anchor, or I'm getting a panther's head, or whatever, instead of the animal that I'm hunting and whatever. So it's going to change with the attitudes of the future. People that are just want stuff, that like things, are going to want it. Oh, I want this, but I want it to look just like the picture. I want it to be just like what I found on Pinterest, put it right here in the same. And the computer will do exactly what you say without rolling its eyes, without fucking being like, oh, this fucking guy, or without even telling you get out of my shop. Like, I'm not going to, I've dealt with centimeter perfectionists, and they don't make good customers, and they're never satisfied with what they end up getting. You know what I mean? In life, even if they got a t-shirt, the print's off, it's not centered right, it's like, people need to source happiness. When they come to a tattoo, it's the only thing you're going to spend money on, that you're going to buy, that's going to last you the rest of your life, and you're going to wear it every day. You're going to take it to the grave. I always tell people, make good choices. Stop with this, like, I saw this on TV and I want it, or I don't know what I want, just throw this on. I always tell people, look, it doesn't have to be your life story, but if it makes you smile, and you think it's going to make you smile for the rest of your life, get it. Guy came into my shop in West Philadelphia, white guy, in a button-down, like a guy just didn't look like he was from around there, you know what I mean? And he wanted a swastika on his forehead. And I was like, why? And he looked like he worked in an office, you know what I'm saying? Like, with the white button-down shirt and the khaki pants and everything. And he kept the taxi running, out front of the shop. And I'm like, why do you, and I started questioning him, because I just come back from India. So, over there's a lot of swastikas, and it's more of a spiritual thing. It wasn't like a Nazi thing or whatever. So I'm like, are you a Nazi? Like, why do you want this? Like, I'm not going to tattoo white supremacy tattoos. But if you can convince me that this is about spirituality or something, then yeah, I'll do it. And he's like, oh yeah, it's very spiritual. Da, 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 da. So I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll do it. But are you sure you want it in your fucking forehead? I'm like, why'd you get it on the side of your face? Maybe if you want, you can grow a beard to get rid of it, Okay, put it on the side of my face. Put it there. And he's like, no, bigger. And I was like, I think he lost a bet or something like that. I don't know why he was doing that. But that was a weird one. Another one, I guess a prostitute. I guess she was a prostitute. She wanted to get me tattooed on her butt cheek, pointing to her asshole, with an arrow, And what was weird was, like, I was like, okay, it sounds like that's fun. This is going to be a great tattoo, And I'm like, so, I said, get in the chair. And I wanted her to just kind of sit backwards so I could just have her cheek up. Hey, she got all fours, like, on the chair, like sitting back, no underwear on, nothing. And I'm just like, hey, okay, hold on. So I tattooed that. But to top it all off, one of the weirdest ones, I didn't tattoo it. This is while I was still apprenticing. And my buddy Dono, he had a girl come in, and she said, how much to get my son's name on the side of my neck, right? And he was like, oh, that'll be like $50 or something. Oh, okay, well, how about a butterfly, I was like, oh, well, that's a little bit bigger. That'll be like $70 or whatever, Okay. What about if I just got a cock on the side of my neck with the word big written above it? My buddy's like, I'll do that for $30 right now. She's like, okay, bam. And she got a big dick and balls on the side of her neck and the word big written above it. And then he's tattooed. He's like, you didn't want your son's name, did you? Like, yeah, load shedding completely sucked. Specifically because I use electricity in here, for electric machines, electric tattooing. Yeah, to print out anything, enlarge it. Lights, I need light. You know what I mean? It's dark in here without it. So what I ended up doing was I got a battery. So I run everything through a battery box. And if the power cuts off suddenly, the battery can stay on for another 30 minutes or so. You know what I mean? It doesn't last that long. I wanted to get a nice one that lasts like 5 hours, but those are real expensive. But I just got one that I can at least finish the tattoo. And then generally I would try to plan, if I knew the load shedding schedule, and if they stick to the load shedding schedule, I would try to, I know I would be closed from this time to that time. And it took a lot of business away, a lot of people would come in, if I had the doors open, but it was dark in here. And I'd be like, I can't tattoo you right now, but, we can plan for, another time, or when the power comes back on. Yeah, it was very frustrating. But yeah, I was thinking about getting a generator, like one of those gasoline generators, But so far so good. Hey, like we're back on the grid, and maybe if people stop stealing the copper out of the transformers and the roads, and we can guarantee I don't know, coal. I just don't see why. That's what we need. Like, I don't know how much nuclear reactors there are here, but I don't understand why they use coal for electric here. This is a rich country. You have diamonds. You have gold, platinum. What else? Others, I'm sure, mining other kind of gems and essential, minerals. That it should be completely first world, like completely. The money should be there. The government should be able to, 21st century, even if I lived in a thatch rondavel, you know what I mean? And I did that for cultural reasons. You should still be able to have Wi-Fi, clean water, food. I don't know. Electric is one of those things where here, your houses are heated with electricity. Your food is cooked with electricity. Everything is run, phones, computers, what, electricity. So what are you going to do when electricity's off? You know what I mean? You have to start a fire to cook. It's not like you have gas range where you can just turn on the gas and cook. How are you going to heat your house? Because the houses here are all made of bricks. And most of the time there's no insulation between the bricks. So they're very cold, and cement floors, cold, very cold. Yeah, so you need it. You need electricity. So electricity needs to be a priority. I mean, I understand how the grid can be overloaded. That makes sense because transformers and what's, not being updated. Infrastructure, has been a big infrastructure problem, since the private sector and the government sector split is the way I look at it. And I'm no politician. I can't tell you what needs to be done in order to make it work, but I can tell you what's not working and how to adjust, to make it work. And it's going to take a lot of upheaval, and you're going to see a lot of upheaval before you see the dust settle and then everybody be kind of satisfied, When I got here, I made a CD of my own music, all like dub reggae and other, just trippy dub music, just psychedelic shit, that really, but it's long been lost. And so the last computer that I had, it was on my iTunes, it went to shit, so it's gone now. I don't know how to find that. But yeah, anybody can get in touch with me here in Maboneng, you know what I mean? I'd love to play anything on anybody's anything, you know what I mean? Whether it's like to help produce a sound, to do keyboards on a sound, to do guitar, I would love to play. I would love to play on like guitar, like session guitar work on musicians out here, like whether it's house music, Kwaito music, African music, but funk music. I'm really into Afro funk and just anything that I can use my kind of American bluesy kind of chops, and mix it with, to make a world music beat or something like that. I would love to do. Plug in a machine. I can't plug in the needle and all that, which gives it a different sound, a different resistance, but you'll hear it. I'll buzz it. It's kind of could you hand me that guitar right there? I want to tune it up real quick. I've only got 5 of the 6 strings on it. Somebody had left me this guitar. A guy, he's like a busker. Close enough for rock and roll, I guess.